Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Inside the Numbers with Chris and Croc. I'm your host, Chris, and unfortunately, Croc's not here. He does have a lot of stuff going on in his personal life and working on some other projects, so we're not going to be upset at him for that. But I don't want you guys to worry. We're going to talk about some interesting stuff today. Obviously, I know a lot of what's been going on people's minds lately is, are we going to get an NFL season with what's going on with COVID around the country? So we'll talk about that. And then a little bit later, I'm going to get into some Q&A with some of our Twitter followers and answer some questions that you guys had for me. So stay tuned. We got a fun show. So first things first, I just want to welcome everybody back to this episode and thank you again for tuning in. I hope everybody's staying safe with a lot of the uncertainty and the COVID-19 still running rampant around the country. I know there's been a lot of debate on, whether or not you should wear a mask or if you shouldn't. My personal view is I wear the mask. I think it's better to be safe than sorry. So just throw the mask on. Make sure that you're protecting yourself, your family, and your friends, and making sure you're protecting everybody else too. Again, I think it's just a better safe than sorry type of thing that we need to be addressing. So let's make sure we're doing that. Now, staying with COVID-19 related information, a lot of people were concerned with whether or not the NFL was even going to have a season due to a lot of players being upset about not feeling like their safety was coming first from the NFL. The NFL and the NFLPA butting heads pretty frequently about how they should approach this upcoming season. But recently, the NFL and the NFLPA have resolved one of the biggest question marks heading into the upcoming season. The NFL has finally agreed to the demands to conduct daily COVID-19 testing for coaches and players, which was a huge thing because I know a lot of the players were protesting and coming together and rallying with each other on social media across all platforms with hashtag We Want to Play. Finally, that happened, and that's the first big step in making sure that we can have a safe season and a productive season for the NFL's players, the coaches, and even the fans if we're going to even get any type of fan attendance at any of these games. One of the things that I think a lot of people aren't taking into account, and I speak frequently with some of my other colleagues about this, is it's not going to be just about the NFL's regulations and the team's regulations when it comes to this. If COVID continues to grow while we open up the states to more and more stuff, we're going to see a lot more cases where people are catching it because we haven't really snuffed it out, right? So what's going to happen is we may run into a situation where a lot of these teams are having to deal with state level legislation about shutdowns or limitations on attendance for a lot of these games, things of this nature. So these are other obstacles you might have to run into. I don't personally foresee that being too big of an issue. I think there's too much revenue to be lost, even for these states, if we're not going to get a productive NFL season. So what I think we really need to focus on right now is making sure that the NFL and the NFLPA are able to come to an agreement on what they feel is going to be, most beneficial for everybody that's involved, right? So again, the good news is that the NFL and the NFLPA have taken a very good first step into making sure we get that taken care of. Just be aware that there's some more groundwork that needs to happen before we can make sure that we get a season. All right, guys. So now here's what I want to do. I want to jump into a new segment that I'm going to start doing on Inside the Numbers, and I want to start interacting and get some Q&A with some of our YouTube followers and Twitter followers. Start answering some of these questions that you guys may have for me. Maybe give you a little bit of an insight into this crazy mind on how I think the inner workings of the NFL are, right? So without further ado, I kind of just want to jump right into it. All right, guys. So our first question today comes in from Twitter. At Zach Whitewalls88 asks, is Ezekiel Elliott going to get over 1,500 yards on the ground this season? It's a good question, Zach. I'm going to say probably not. And that's not because he's not capable of doing it, right? We've seen him do it. And he's obviously one of the top 3 premier backs in the NFL. So he's capable of doing it. But I have reservations, being the fact that the Dallas Cowboys lost All-Pro center Travis Frederick this year to retirement. And now the guy who's more than likely going to step in because there's not a lot of offseason workouts and programs to really have any of these rookies or undrafted guys potentially supplant him is going to be Joe Looney. Now, Joe Looney stepped in 2018 for Travis Frederick, and he was pretty good. He had some deficiencies in his pass protection, but his run blocking was definitely good enough to get the job done. So that does help their situation a little bit. But with the emergence of backup running back Tony Pollard last season, showing what he's able to do, I imagine he's going to get more touches this season than he did last year. And then obviously hiring new head coach Mike McCarthy, who's historically favored a more pass-heavy offense, doesn't really help the situation either. And then obviously you got to take into account, the Dallas Cowboys drafted wide receiver CeeDee Lamb out of Oklahoma, who I imagine is going to be featured heavily in this offense, especially with how coveted that player was for them, and then him managing to fall to them. So my guess is the over-under is going to be around 1,300 yards for Zeke on the ground. But again, that's not a bad season by any stretch of the imagination. And obviously he's going to be featured in the pass game too. So 1,500 yards seems like a stretch. 1,300 to 1,350 is what I think most people can probably count on. All right, now our next question is going to come in from Twitter as well. And it comes from @NickFloor_. And he's going to give us another Dallas Cowboy question. He's wondering, are the Dallas Cowboys going to be able to produce 3 1,000-yard receivers in 2020? Probably not. Once again, that's only happened, I believe, 5 times in NFL history. And I think the last team that did it was the Arizona Cardinals in 2008 with Anquan Bolden, Larry Fitzgerald, and Steve Breston. I don't know. Fact check that for me. Make sure I'm correct. But I believe that's the last time it happened. And like I said, it's only happened 5 times. Now, last year the Dallas Cowboys had 2 in Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, both going over 1,000, and they had Randall Cobb with over 800. So it might be something that's achievable, but my big reservations there come with wide receivers, especially in their first year. And as prolific as I believe that CeeDee Lamb is going to be, especially in that slot, wide receivers just don't typically come online and have huge years in their first season, especially not without a realistic offseason program. But Mike McCarthy does historically like to throw the football a lot, so it's possible. But if you ask me to make a bet on it, I'm going to say no. I would actually be incredibly happy if they had another 2,000 wide receiver guys. Or excuse me, not 2,000 yards, but 2 wide receivers hitting 1,000. So, yeah, I don't think it's possible. Or excuse me, I don't think it's probable, but it's certainly possible. Good question, though, Nick. So let's go ahead and get right into the next question. This one comes from @KingKaz2 on Twitter. And King Kaz wants to know, what are my thoughts on Tyreek Hill? Is he overrated? Is he underrated? Or is he just right? I'm going to be totally honest with you, man. I think he's just right. I don't see how you could possibly overrate the guy. He's without question, at least in my opinion, the most dangerous weapon in the NFL. And I don't see how you could underrate him either, because I think everybody in the league, analysts, experts, pundits, myself, people on Twitter, we all understand exactly what Tyreek Hill is. I think his underneath route running is severely underrated because he's so compact and stocky, very strong, and he's very quick that he can get underneath a lot of stuff and create space. They just don't use him in that manner as much as they probably could. They usually tend to take him deep most of the time and go for a lot of home runs. But who am I, right? I'm just a guy on YouTube. I'm not going to question Andy Reid's play calling and play design. And currently, whatever they're doing with him right now has been working just fine. So no, my answer is obviously I don't believe he's overrated. I don't see how you could underrate him. So yeah, he's got to be just right. That's a good question though, man. All right, now our last question comes from Stay Frosty on Twitter, and he asks, is Dak Prescott better than Jimmy Garoppolo? Come here. Let me talk to you. Yes. I don't know how many times I have to go over this with you guys, but I get it. I have a lot of 49er followers on Twitter, and I appreciate all of you guys. It's just, we've gone over this so many times, and I can't tell you guys exactly how exhausting it is, but it comes with the territory. So you guys ask these questions. I love to answer them. So here goes the simplest breakdown I can give you. One guy benefited greatly in his first full season in the NFL from an elite defense and an elite running game. One guy also benefited from having one of the best coaching staffs and developmental staffs in the NFL, at least on the offensive side of the ball. The other guy has steadily progressed every year since he's been in the NFL, and also had one of the worst developmental staffs and coaching staffs in the NFL his entire career. So I don't understand how this is even an argument. It's incredibly hard to win football games in this league, and it takes a full team to be able to do that. And Jimmy Garoppolo has had everything he's needed to be successful on a team level in terms of wins and losses and how far you've advanced deep into the playoffs and things of that nature. But if we're talking individually, who anybody would rather have, the obvious answer has got to be Dak Prescott. Jimmy Garoppolo's probably already peaked at this point in his career. And keep in mind, I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. He's not. I just think last season is probably what we should temper our expectations to see from Jimmy moving forward. And we have yet to see the best Dak Prescott in the NFL up to this point in his career. So to answer your question, yes, I believe Dak Prescott is better than Jimmy Garoppolo. Thanks for the question, though, bud. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. But I really want to thank you guys for tuning in. Had a lot of fun answering your guys' questions. And like I said before, I'm going to start throwing a Q&A into every one of our episodes. So make sure, if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. Let you know whenever we put out a new episode. Drop some comments. Ask me some questions. If you haven't, follow me on Twitter. I'm always responding to everybody on there. So if you have questions, you can hit me up there as well. And we just started a new Instagram page, so you could go ahead and like that as well, at ITN_podcast. Again, thank you guys for tuning into this week's episode, and we'll see you in the next one.